Hello and welcome to this exciting episode. As usual, always a very interesting guest, and today someone exceptionally special and interesting. Dr. Ebrahim Rasool is here. He's the former Western Cape Premier and former South African Ambassador to the US. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much, and it's good to be on Dean TV.
It's very interesting having you here. Finally, our paths have crossed many times in the past, somewhere along the line, as we've seen earlier today. I like going into the people behind the people, and that's what I want to do. Ebrahim Rasool. Who is Ebrahim Rasool now?
Well, he's much older than that newspaper article. He's gone completely grey. He's been away from the country and has found a new perspective on much of life. And so, yeah, I think that that's probably the central character of human beings, the continuous capacity to change. And so what I was then and what I was saying then and doing then is not necessarily what I do now, but I still remain a fairly simple human being. I've learned some hard lessons over the last 20 years of democracy, and I've had an eye-opening experience being in Washington, D.C. for the last 4.5 years. And alhamdulillah, I'm blessed. I think that I hope to continue walking in Allah's shadow.
I think it's a very interesting part. What we know you as is the Premier of the Western Cape back in the day. And one would drive along the freeway and see this flashing blue lights, and we'd know that's the Premier coming along, and that was you. And I saw you at a few locations, speeches and that sort of thing. How has that all changed, gone to the USA, being out of South Africa and being away from the people that you used to, although representing South Africa?
That's been the most wonderful change from this kind of hyper visibility, hyper recognition in Cape Town for good and bad reasons, for people who like you and people who don't like you, and taking it all in your stride, and then going almost to the anonymity of the US, where you can walk around the shopping centers, walk down the street, and you've actually got to watch yourself, looking for faces who recognize you, being ready to greet. And so the change is, one, that people didn't know me, and secondly, I wanted nothing from those people. I didn't want their votes, I didn't want their support, I didn't want anything from them, and it was just wonderful being yourself. And I think it began to change as the 4.5 years went. You can't spend 2 hours with Wolf Blitzer on CNN on the day that Nelson Mandela died and then still be unrecognizable. But alhamdulillah, it was a freedom that I really enjoyed, to be myself, drive myself around. I had a driver for official functions, but really just, for me, the US is a country made for road trips. And so if you have a good 4x4 and you go from Washington to New York, it's one of the most wonderful experiences, just being a tourist, seeing things. But the greatest tourism is actually to see your own country, your own community, your own Muslim community from afar. Because sometimes when you're in it, you don't understand it too well, you think you have all the assumptions right, and then suddenly from afar, you see ourselves for who we are. And that was wonderful.
Doctor, I know that your family has gone with you, and that forms an important part of you being on that side. How did they adapt to all of this?
Look, I think that my daughter, after a year, said, "You know, Dad, it's so great to drive down the street and not be afraid what the newspaper posters are saying about you." So that's been one great change for them, to just be ordinary children, not be the children of the Premier, having security, take them to school and all of those kind of things. I think what was very strange is the phenomenon of Islamophobia. In the first month that my wife and son were walking outside, a car took the effort to stop next to them, and someone opened the window and shouted, "Go back to Iran." And My son said, but can't they
Have
see
you
me
guys
South
ever
Africa?
been there before?
No, we've never.
Okay.
So, I mean, that was it. Rashida would get cold treatment in shops, and she would call the people racist. Is it because I'm black? And by any stretch, she's not black. And she didn't understand it. It wasn't a blackness. It was a scarf. And so I think that there have been those adaptations. But by and large, we've enjoyed great generosity in the United States of America. Rashida has discovered a writing gene that she is trying to cultivate. I found the time to write. We've had to convert my son from baseball to cricket in the last 3 months while we're here. He's cut his hair because up till that moment with his long hair, he was called Troy Palomaro, who's a star quarterback of one of the champion teams. So it's been great. My daughter's completed a BSc degree and is now at Pretoria University doing medicine. So it's been a wonderful time to reconnect as a family, to not have to work 18 hours a day, to have quality time, to have weekends by and large for yourself, to watch not the recorded rugby, but the rugby as it happens on a Saturday morning at 8 o'clock. And so, yeah, no, it's been quite good.
Just taking one step back to the time that you were Premier of the Western Cape, do you miss all of that at all? Because you sound like you are saying that you really enjoyed this, but this was the aftermath of that. But so do you actually miss that at all?
I must say that
I mean, most people would find it glamorous to have all these blue flashing lights
no,
and
no,
these
while
people
it's
and all
there,
these things.
but I've had some episodes before that. You know, I was Minister of Health in the Western Cape, and then suddenly Ernest Kriel decided to kick us out of his government, and then all the people who invited you to their boxes to watch rugby and cricket no longer invite you. And after that, I told Rashida, if ever I'm in a position again and I get invited by all of these people, smack me if I accept the invitations, because they're not inviting me, they're inviting the title.
Correct, yes.
And so that was the attitude that I went into the premiership with.
Because
that people honor the title, but not necessarily the person.
Correct, yes. Now, you know, as a channel head, we, on a smaller degree, we experience the same thing. People come to you all the time, and it's something that they want from you all the time. I don't know when last someone came in here saying, here's something for you. It's always about, how do you deal with that, and how do you still deal with that? Because I think that that component will still be there.
No, I think it is. I think people are now slowly getting the idea that I don't solve pension problems now. I don't
have
get an easy access into the
things,
hospitals, and I can't do anything about their drain that's been blocked. That's all Helen Zille's problems now. And so good luck to her. But the fact of the matter is that it's a life. It depends what you make of it. And I've never tried to sever myself from people. I'd still go to mosque ordinarily on a Friday, and whether it is people asking for a dua or for a pension, I'm willing to take it. I still, like I did then, go to shopping centers and push my own trolleys and all of those kind of things. You see, I think the problem with holding office is when it starts to define you rather than you define it. And so I was a fairly humble chap. By the time I went to the US, it was a complete virtue to drive myself to not be recognized and all of those, because I had learned very hard lessons, how fleeting those kind of things are. And certainly I've learned very hard lessons about how fickle people are, and that you mustn't confuse people's affection for you with their desire to get something from you.
Correct, yes. I think that's a very important aspect that you're mentioning there, because when we talk about these public figures, that's all that people are talking about. Go and see the Premier about this, go and see the Ambassador about that, and that sort of thing. Moving a bit along now to incidences, I find it interesting. I know I saw some pictures with you and the US President Obama. Tell us a bit about that.
I think I was probably sent to the US because in 2006 there was this unknown senator from Illinois who visited Cape Town, and the president didn't have time to see him, the vice president didn't have, the ministers didn't, the mayor didn't. But because I had been in the US before, I knew there was some name recognition. And Congressman Keith Ellison told me about his friend, the senator, and said he's coming to South Africa. So I said, no, okay, I'll see him. And we spent 2.5 hours in the Premier's office in Cape Town, just having a chat with the senator on everything. And then we took a photo of me handing him a gift of Nelson Mandela's first speech at the City Hall, the day he was released from prison. Of course, 2 years later, this senator becomes the next president of the United States. And
that's quite interesting.
And then I get a phone call that the South African president, Zuma, wants to see me. And I thought I was in his bad books, but suddenly he wanted to see me. And then he said, look, we messed up. We didn't see this man when he came here. You saw him. Yes. So can you please go to Washington?
Yes.
And so that was it. And I landed there, and I was warned that it would take about 3 months before I get accreditation and go to the Oval Office and hand my credentials over. I was surprised. The aeroplane landed in Washington. We were still getting our hair straight and everything, and the pilot announces, could Ambassador Rasool and his family please come to the front? And there were all these protocol officers standing at the door of the aeroplane welcoming me on behalf of President Obama. The cars then took me through, and they said, President Obama is very aware that in 10 days' time it is Ramadan.
Yes.
So he is expecting you in the Oval Office the day before Ramadan, okay, so that you can hand your credentials and then enjoy Ramadan. So that was a record.
And was that your first meeting?
That was my first meeting again afterwards. So we had a
good relation. If I may ask you, on a personal level, I know that, for example, when we see you on TV and everywhere else, there's this pristine image, and there's this image of, there's the politician, there's the premier, and now he's the ambassador, and that's what South Africa sees. But now sitting with you and having a chat with you, I find the person behind the person. Did you find that in Obama at all?
No, when you really pin that person down, tell me about him. But but the point is that no, it's really and that was it. There was the formal part of handing over the thing, but most of it was just for that 10 to 12 minutes was banter.
Yes.
It was really just, and it's again, this lost art of keeping human bonds between people while managing and debating your ideological differences. I think people believe that when there's an ideological or ideational difference with someone, that you've got to sever. And that's the curse of the world that we're in today. I've probably had the privilege of speaking to President Obama and his administration on far harder issues. But you never lose your smile. You never lose your gentleness. Because here is a president filled with pride at being president of the remaining superpower. How do you get him to change the way in which that superpower responds, especially in the Muslim world and in Africa and so forth? You can't get him to change when you're tearing the skin off his face. Correct. Or when you are insulting his country. Never mind whether you believe that his country is the cause of much trouble. So I think that the search for the human is a very important, and therefore we must never never replace the human lens with which we view the world with an ideological lens, because it diminishes who you are when you do that, and it deadens your mission to make things different.
Correct. Yes.
In reality.
Do you believe that you went over there as a South African to represent South Africa, but do you believe that at the same time you were representing Muslims around the world on that level, to be able to show those people that this is who we really are, this is how we speak, this is how we act?
I think it was accidental. I went there as a South African ambassador. I had a few objectives. I needed to secure the African Growth and Opportunities Act so that trade could continue to flow. I needed to secure investments for our energy installations like Medupe. I needed to get investments for infrastructure. I needed to get scholarships for students, etc., etc. So there was a very clear agenda, and alhamdulillah, I think that I have achieved 90% of the things that I was sent to achieve. Of course, it was very puzzling in the midst of all of this heavy Islamophobia in the USA, in the midst of the war on terror, and in the midst of the the occupation of Iraq and Afghanistan and all of those kind of places, how does South Africa send a fairly conscious Muslim to represent the country in Washington? And so it became a little bit of a phenomenon. And I think that when people then heard me speak and Googled me and all of those, they felt that there was some things about my role also in the Muslim community in Cape Town and in South Africa. They were able to find YouTubes of khutbahs I was making and all of those kind of things. And so suddenly I was being asked in the midst of all of this
were question marks on that.
For my opinion on this, that and the other. And so suddenly both the US administration and its large white society as well as the Muslim community were wondering, can I play a broader role in building a bridge between Muslims and fellow Americans? And so that culminated, of course, with the khutbah I then led in the Washington National Cathedral, where
I heard about that one.
where we got the first Jumu'ah ever in a official national cathedral in which all presidents are inaugurated and from which all presidents are buried. That's where we held the Jumu'ah. And so I think that, and it works I think that what I was able to do differently, using all the experience of the community in South Africa, is to walk the middle path, not apologizing for being nice. Because sometimes we think we must be angry with those that we consider our enemy. And so the Muslim community in the US was veering between two extremes. They were either so nice that they were assimilating and becoming indistinguishable from their host country, or they were so angry that they were becoming extreme. And what I think we were able to bring over and use as an export product from Cape Town to the US is the ability to walk in the middle. You don't have to get so angry, although you must remain committed to justice, and you don't have to give up your identity, although you can be both American and Muslim. And I think that that's really
so it's
the
the
kind
management
of
of that dynamic that was the important factor.
It's more than management, you've got to live it.
Correct, yes.
I think management is something out there, and the world have detectors for such nonsense.
Correct, yes.
They know when you're faking.
Yes.
And
Of
so
course.
you've got to internalize it and you've got to live it.
Yes.
It's got to be in your persona. You've got to be a non-extreme person in your core. If your deen is Islam and it's derived from peace, you've got to be peaceful. If the first attribute of God is Ar-Rahman and the mission of the Prophet is Rahmatul lil Alameen, it's mercy, you've got to exude mercy. You don't put on mercy, it's not makeup. It comes from without. If your deen is ummah, if your ummah is ummatan wasatan, an ummah that's in the middle, that is balanced and that's not on the extremes, then wasatiyah or centeredness comes from within. It's not like putting on an item of clothing to look different or putting on makeup or a wig or anything like that. It's something that comes from without. And that's the art that we've got to be able to teach from Cape Town. The Cape Town Muslim community is a community comfortable with themselves and comfortable with others.
Correct,
You
yes.
can't be comfortable with others if you're not comfortable with yourself. Antisocial behavior is because you are internally conflicted. So I think that's the transplant that we need to do from Cape Town to the rest of the world.
Yes, Dr. Rasool, just moving forward, we're looking at a very rich history and your role in South African politics and beyond that now. But going forward, where are you going to from here? You're back from the States. And what is the next lineup for you?
Look, alhamdulillah, I've just been made an offer to be a distinguished scholar in residence in the Al-Walid Center at Georgetown University in Washington. So for the next few months, inshallah, I'm hoping to be there.
So this means you're going back now?
Inshallah. It basically means that I'll spend the next few months writing and researching and teaching and working with ulama and the cathedral in North America, doing training and all of that, and doing this transplant that I'm speaking about. And so what I'm feverishly doing before I go is to make sure that the inoculation that we bring from Cape Town to places like the United States is not a diluted inoculation that when we try to teach them not to be sectarian, then we become sectarian here. If we try to teach them not to be extreme, that we become extreme here. If we try to teach them from the example of Cape Town how to work with Christians and Jews and Hindus and even atheists, we mustn't start having radio shows that tell you can't go to the funeral of a Christian. And so the point that I'm making is that I feel that those of us who are doing the transplant from Cape Town to the world must also make sure that our base is not being torn up by factionalists and by sectarian forces and by anti-Christian muftis and all of those kind of people.
Correct, yes. I think that it's very interesting that you're mentioning that, because we talk about these things every day, and our thinking is along that lines, where even as a channel we got programs that are hosted by non-Muslims, we got programs that are not Islamic at all. But that's because people are people, and we see it that way, and I'm so happy that you do. At the same time,
Alhamdulillah, the roof is still standing.
Correct, yes. Going one step forward as we conclude the program, I know that there's lots of youth that are watching this program and they see you as this figure and this example in many ways. A Muslim in politics, it's been around the world. What's your advice to them?
Look, I think that the most difficult thing about being young is to be young without a cause. I think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us to have grown up in a challenging ideology called apartheid. It defined our cause for us. It provided the lens with which to view Islam. And so we had it fairly easy that despite ourselves, we were forced into the front lines of political battle and political struggle, and we could live up to the injunctions for justice and all of those kind of things. Now that there is no such thing as apartheid, now that colonialism is a declining thing, now that that so many of the violent manifestations of ideology in the world are receding, it must be, and this is the worry I have for my own children, what is the defining cause for your life? And it becomes less tangible. And so I think what the advice to young people must be is that the causes are there. It may not be as stark, and it may not wear uniforms, and it may not drive Caspers, but the causes are there. And the causes are not confined to your own community. You don't have to always just wear the Free Palestine. You can wear the Free Western Sahara t-shirt as well. You can wear the Pro-Arab Spring t-shirt as well. You can wear the I am Brown,
yes,
who was killed in Ferguson.
Correct, yes.
I mean, you've got to diversify the destinations of your empathy and your mercy.
Correct, yes.
Because the Prophet ﷺ was rahmatul lil alameen, a mercy unto all creation. It is not a mercy only for those who look like you, pray like you, talk like you, eat like you, and so forth. It's got to diversify, because it's easy to be merciful for all of those people who are like you. In fact, you probably have used only 50% of your capacity for mercy. The most mercy that you show with maximum effort is the one in which you've got to reach out across the lines of those who are like you, those who are different. When you can be merciful to those that you have absolutely no shared basis with, except that you are human, then you are using the full capacity of your rahmah. And that, I think, is the challenge. How do you, and it's alameen, it is all creation. It's not just people. And so the environment becomes important. And so causes across the world become important. What I would want to say to young people is that it's great to do social media, but you can only like on Facebook. You can't debate.
Correct, yes.
You can only have 48 characters on Twitter. You can't mobilize and organize. It doesn't build organization. You can be so connected and so disconnected at the same time, and therefore human contact is absolutely critical. You've got to have time out from your technology at home, simply to allow your values of your parents' generation to come through, question them, refine them, and then modify them for your purposes. But you can't cut yourself off, because otherwise we're all these kind of very atomized individuals walking about, more comfortable with our technology than in speaking to other people, reading 48 characters and ignoring the book. And so I think that you've got to put the full wealth, the complexity of information, not the simplicity that comes only. I'm not against it. You've got to use it, but it can't be your only source of life.
Dr. Rasool, thank you for joining me. I know the one thing that hasn't changed is your accent, because everything else has changed, but the accent is still there.
Yeah.
Dr. Ebrahim Rasool, finally on the show at Deen TV. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, goodbye.